Coming up on In Your Neighborhood, Milton is getting set to celebrate its bicentennial in a big way. We'll look back on some of the history of this community and tell you what's to come in June. Plus, you'll hear how a Susquehanna University professor makes the connection between Broadway show tunes and economic concepts.
There's some cool new stuff out there. Cars that drive themselves, phones that talk to us.
There's a cafe behind you.
And now TV everywhere. That's right, lucky SCTV customer. Now you can watch channels from your TV package just about anywhere on just about any device. Catch your favorites in the waiting room, coffee shop, break room, the airport, wherever. TV everywhere. A cool extra for no extra cost. Visit sctv.com/TVE to sign up today.
Dremel. Hey, Dremel?
No, I'm David.
Can't find what you're looking for? Service Electric Cablevision is the perfect tool to find what you want, when you want. Push the On-Demand button on your remote to explore SECV's On-Demand library. The on-screen menus make it easy to find thousands of favorite hit movies and shows you can play instantly. Service Electric Cablevision. It's all about you.
Welcome to In Your Neighborhood. I'm your host, Chris O'Rourke. We're coming to you from the Milton State Park. It's one of the venues for Milton's week-long party next month for their bicentennial. It's a community that's been through a lot and persevered. It was, at the time, the largest emergency relief effort ever undertaken in the United States, the response to the Great Milton Fire of 1880. 80% of the town was affected, and 3,000 were left homeless. A spark from the Milton Car Works, what is now ACF, landed on a roof and caught fire.
But the strange thing was there were all these errors that happened at the same time. You know, there was the fire whistles blew, but no one responded at first because it happened just before noon, and the custom of the day was to blow the whistles at noon to tell everyone it's lunch break. So the whistles are blowing, but very few people are understanding that there's a fire because they believe it's the normal lunch hour. A terrible wind just happened to arise that afternoon, and it just fanned the flames, and it spread very quickly.
The southern portion of the borough was largely saved by a wall of water from the Sunbury Fire Department. One person died, but it wasn't fire-related. The governor declared a state of emergency, and not only did communities answer the call for help, but other states also responded. Just 3 years later, Milton was back up and running. It's that can-do spirit that is being celebrated in this bicentennial year, and on this day in April, we sat down with event committee member John Meckley and Milton Mayor Ed Nelson. Behind them was one of the banners that will hang throughout the borough, and more importantly, the original deed for Milton. While the borough was incorporated back in 1817, it really all began about 27 years earlier, when Andrew Straub bought 200 acres in a sheriff's sale. The deed is clearly legible on vellum or sheepskin some 227 years later. It was discovered by chance back in 2012 by volunteers cleaning out a vault in the old Milton Library on South Front Street. To make this story even more interesting, the library sits on the exact spot where Straub built his first home, a log cabin.
You can imagine that among his prized possessions with him were his legal documents, including the deed to the property he just purchased. And he moved several times in his lifetime. And when the deed was rediscovered, it was actually on that exact GPS location where the library found its home. So it's very peculiar that it somehow came full circle several hundred years later and ended up in the exact same spot that Andrew Straub would have kept it in the first place.
Yeah, because no one knows how it got to that spot in the library, do
we have no idea.
Borough officials confirmed it was the deed by taking it to the Northumberland County Courthouse, where all of the old records are kept in the basement. they found the handwritten copy that matched the one that was found in the library. Straub settled here with the intent of building a mill next to Limestone Run. Naturally, people assumed that's where the borough got its name as a mill town, and this sign bears that fact. But the truth is a subject of debate.
There's a little bit of debate as to why. Straub's surveyors actually asked him to name the town Straubtown, and he did not want his name associated with the town. He was a very humble person, and so some of the surveyors then suggested the town Milltown because he was going to build a number of mills here. The Straub family records, as reported by noted Pennsylvania historian God Charles, report that Andrew Straub's friend was a farmer named John Chestnut, who actually became the first mayor of incorporated Milton. But Mr. Chestnut was a fan of John Milton. Paradise Lost was his favorite book, and he suggested to Andrew Straub that he name the town after the author, and the Straub family records insist that Andrew Straub did in fact name the town Milton after the author John Milton. Wow. I prefer the literary
I would have never guessed that.
Yeah.
These two glimpses into Milton's past, the Great Fire and Straub's deed, were two topics of lectures held earlier in the year as part of the celebration. The lectures gave the committee a little bit of an idea of the interest in this big event for the borough. Nelson tells us that he expected 50 to 60 people for the talks on different subjects of Milton's past. Instead, there were packed houses of between 250 to 300 people or more. It was a gratifying moment for the people who began planning for this back in 2016.
I imagine it was probably the beginning of last year when the subject first come up, and John and Chuck, Beck, and a couple other folks in town started getting together and making some basic plans of what they could possibly do. And then I guess about the middle of the year, things really come together and started moving forward real rapidly.
You know, the real nice thing about it is, I mean, it's an awful lot of work that's getting pulled up together in a very short amount of time, but it's built a real community coalition, a real sense of community. I mean, we've got partners all across the valley who are stepping forward to help us, businesses who are making tremendous financial contributions to make this work, but also nonprofit organizations that have stepped forward and built a really unique coalition. I got the Milton Public Library, the YMCA, the Milton Ministerium has been highly involved, the Milton Moose, the Milton Community Pool, the Milton Community Choir, the Milton Community Band. The Milton School District has been instrumental. The borough is obviously key in what we're doing. The Milton Historical Society has taken the lead in organizing most of the events. So and I know I'm forgetting plenty of others, so forgive me, but it's a huge coalition of volunteers that have stepped forward to say that, you know, we're putting our marker down to say that this year means something to us, and it's a place that we step forward from.
The big bicentennial week starts off on June 10th with something that hasn't occurred since 1964. A passenger train will leave from Conagra and run on rail lines that haven't been used in over 50 years. There will be 3 trips that day, with each carrying about 300 people across the river and up into White Deer Township. Also that day, you can attend the first annual Milton Beer Fest. There will be beer, wine, and food, and 4 bands performing over the course of 4 hours. It's something they hope they can hold every year. The Milton State Park will be the focus of attention the next day, June 11th. It was 50 years ago, during the 150th anniversary, that it was created. One of the planned events will be a river paddle from Watsontown. It's hoped that 100 paddlers will be in the water. There's also plans for a color run on the island that the high school's organizing. So if you'd like to run a 5K and don't mind getting a little dirty in the process, then it's the place to be. There also will be entertainment on the island. You can find details about the events throughout the week on the Milton 2017 website. The big day for the entire bicentennial celebration will be Saturday, June 17th. That's when the bicentennial parade will be held. This is footage of the 2016 edition of the Big Harvest Festival parade, which heads down Front Street each September. Organizers are promising a parade that will dwarf this one.
The organizers in this group that sat down to look at this have really got a good program going. If I remember rightly, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's 3 drum and bugle type groups. I think there's 4 or 5 string bands from out of Philadelphia area and such. And I think I was told there's 8 different high schools coming to participate.
Yeah, so that's so far, and we keep getting additional requests every day to participate in our parade. The parade is going to be a parade that we have not seen the likes of which here in this town. It's going to be huge. As the mayor said, we've got 3, perhaps now 4 drum and bugle corps, nationally award-winning drum and bugle corps coming. The Mummers from Philadelphia are making an appearance, several of them, and the parade is going to step down Front Street as is our custom here in town, but unlike other parades, it's going to turn right and cross the river bridge, and the bands are going to drop onto the state park and perform a live concert at the conclusion of the parade. Our final band in the parade is going to be a really nice New Orleans style band, and if you've been to New Orleans, you know what they do in New Orleans. They get out of their chairs and they follow the parade and they join it. So we're going to ask the public to join our parade and march through town and end on the island with us and celebrate for the rest of the afternoon. So
also that day, 2 historical markers will be dedicated. Only 14 have been approved for this year by the Commonwealth, and 2 will be located in Milton. The first will be for former Governor James Pollock, who called Milton home. His claim to fame is he literally coined the words, "In God We Trust," on our national currency. The other marker is for the Reverend James Hepburn, a former minister at the First Presbyterian Church who went on to be a very famous missionary in Japan and was the first to ever translate the Bible into Japanese. He's very well known and very well regarded even to this day in Japan. Meckley tells us they get tourists from Japan who come to Milton inquiring about Reverend Hepburn.
So the conclusion of our Celebration Day festivities will be in the evening on Saturday, June 17th at the Milton High School Stadium, Alumni Stadium. And there the community choir and community band will do a joint performance, hopefully a packed stadium crowd. What's unique about the concert is that we were able to commission a piece of work, of music, specifically for the event, and it's a march, and it's entitled The Miltonian. It'll be performed publicly for the very first time at that concert, and then we're sharing the work with other bands across the valley who've agreed to play it later on in the year. So it'll be a march that's celebrated throughout the year in honor of Milton's bicentennial, but you'll get to hear it first on June 17th. As the concert winds down that evening, it's going to be a really nice long show. It'll be capped by a fireworks display that should knock some people's socks off.
Milton is holding a community-wide food drive as part of its bicentennial celebration. It's actually going on now through May 15th. Any donations that come from within Milton will stay in the borough, while donations from outside of Milton will go to the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank. When we come back, we'll introduce you to a Susquehanna University professor who's making the connection between Broadway show tunes and economic principles.
You've made a smart choice. Service Electric Cablevision. Everything you need to stay in touch is in your hands. Like TV Everywhere, a growing selection of networks from your TV package you can watch anytime, anywhere, on any internet-connected computer, tablet, or smartphone. It's all included in your Service Electric Cablevision TV subscription for no extra cost. To learn more, visit sctv.com/TVE. It's easy to sign up and watch TV everywhere.
Freedom. It's as American as shoe fly pie. We are the descendants of patriots, yet we sell out our auto and home insurance to 1-800-DIY.com gobbly blah blah blah. Take back your insurance freedom with Keystone, Piper Nagany, and Norrie. They quote the insurance marketplace because they work for you, not the insurance companies, and they only quote the best. Call for insurance freedom. Visit Keystone, Piper Nagany, and Norrie, and they're on that Facebook thingy too.
Students arrived for Matt Rousu's 10 o'clock game theory class at Susquehanna University last month. On this day, they were greeted by the song Master of the House from the movie version of Les Miserables. The economics professor begins all of his classes in this way, with a song. While it's usually a Broadway show tune, it can sometimes be a country, hip-hop, rock, or classic rock song, like the Beatles' The Taxman. He takes into account how long the song is and starts it before class so that it ends just as they are supposed to start. The song always has something to do with the lesson that day.
How does Master of the House relate to what we're studying at the moment? Why would I have chosen that song? So what does he do? Okay, go ahead.
He does these public for customers while that's not real.
Absolutely. So he's clearly a sleazy guy, right? And he's robbing his customers, right? He talks about how he robs them. He, puts in, mixes things together, calls it beef. All of the things that he's doing to cheat the customers. Presumably, this is not a repeated game, right? Why do most businesses not operate that way? Well, I would like to think most people aren't as slimy as that person. In the first place, that said, even if they are, they wouldn't have the incentive necessarily to do that because you rely on repeated business, word of mouth. Even if that person won't be back, there's mechanisms where people can report on how well things are going. Basically, business is in indefinitely repeated games, so I thought that video clip is pretty relevant for today.
There's a few benefits I see in doing this. One, it kind of sets the tone of the day. There are so many songs that relate to economic concepts that I can always find a song that relates to whatever we're covering for the day, whether it's economic growth or elasticities or just demand and supply or taxes. Sets the mood for the day. Students actually, many will arrive early to see the song. So there's that's a good side effect. And as a teacher, what I really like is the moment the music stops, they know class begins. So I never have to go through, okay, let's start up for the day. And people have been chit-chatting, and then it takes a minute to get everybody to be quiet. They know as soon as the song ends, everybody's kind of quiet, ready to jump right into the lesson.
While Rousu uses different kinds of music to begin his classes, his interest is in Broadway show tunes and how many of them address economic principles. It's a research project he began 5 years ago, although he says in hindsight, it took a lot longer than it probably should have to make the connection. He was first exposed to the music of Broadway back in 1997.
So my wife was a musical theater major, and so I had not really had much exposure to that until I took her for her Christmas present. I actually bought her tickets to a musical for her first Christmas together. And so Sunset Boulevard, right? I thought I did well. And this is actually really good. And so I enjoyed, and then we went